All I know is it's freaking cold here.
Really? We're getting snow.
It's going to be high in the 40s today. So we're in the 20s and low, and the high in the 40s in Phoenix is like freaking, you might as well be below zero. Nobody knows how to clean their windshield, the ice off their windshield. So my daughter couldn't go to school this morning, and I was laughing at her because I wasn't going to help her. Figure it out. YouTube it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Today, our very own Lee Witcher is going to be running the show, but I want to hand over the microphone for a couple announcements. So first, Terry, how's the conference coming? What should people know? When's the last chance to buy tickets?
There we go. Conference is doing good. We're about 75% sold out. We released a couple more VIP tickets past couple weeks. So we're still kind of figuring out some last minute things, but everything's set up. So it's we're gonna have golf on Wednesday, and then the VIP get together on Thursday, VIP day on Friday, conference Saturday and Sunday, and then we're doing a big tech mastermind on Monday. So yeah, it's a full-blown gig, and looking forward to it, and gonna have lots of fun.
Nice. Where can people sign up or find out more?
SEO spring training.
So SEOspringtraining.com, everyone. Go check it out. And we also have Madge here. Madge, can you hop on and tell everyone about the updates to your press release service?
Oh, thank you, Ted. So with Magic PR from last week, we've ended up signing a contract with a major US distributor. So we now have national US distribution. Premium sites, which will include Business Insider. That was one of the biggest ones that I wanted, and have been able to sign them up. So if you go on the site, and it will be the Gold package. We are working on a new pricing page, but the pricing will remain the same for at least the next 3 months. But the pricing page design will be changing going forward. So if you end up purchasing Gold or Platinum, they will include the new national US distribution, and the referring domain count, which I know Ted loves to talk about, is currently sitting between 600 and 700 referring domains.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And even if you remove the APIs, after everything, you're looking about 600 very good PR sites. So yeah, it's exciting times.
And what's the lowest point of entry for people who want to try for the first time?
So if you're trying it for the first time, I would recommend the Bronze package if you don't want any premium links. But our best seller right now is the Gold package. Our Bronze package starts at $199. You can try us out. We write the press release. We will send it to you for approval. Once you've approved it, we will then submit it to our distribution networks. If you end up going for the premium, slightly different, where we do still write the PR, we send it to you for approval, but then our editorial team rechecks, make sure everything is all good, and then we submit it, because it's going out to very high top end sites. You got Globe, Newswire, Yahoo, AP News, Business Insider, Bloomberg. I've got all the top ones on board right now. So 2023.
How many referring domains does the Bronze have?
Bronze right now has around 350 to 400. And you're looking another 350 plus on the premium side. It really depends on the actual PR and the type of niche that we end up doing, because it's going out to each endpoint for the premium sites, and they will decide whether they like the PR and the niche, and then they will submit it. But typically right now, from what I'm seeing for our clients, is anything from 350 and above for premium. and the standard, which is the bronze and silver package right now, is currently sitting at 350 sites.
Awesome. And so that's magicpr.com. So if you want to check out more, definitely do. And note that he's really good about his credits. They don't expire. I've had credits, sit there for a year and he was still fine with honoring them. And so if you burn through them slowly like I do, don't worry about it. It's a good service. I use it. I don't make anything off of announcing his service. I just promote it because there's only a few good ones out there, and his has been reliable and it's never done damage to my money sites. It's always had good impact for me as well as my colleagues. So be sure to check it out. And Lee, I will hand it over to you.
Well, let's get through the standard boilerplate fun stuff here. Carolyn, what's up?
Still in SEO.
Still in SEO? Excellent.
Yeah. So, season 3 is going fine. I'm kind of doing more of a venting session as the new year started, but I'm sure I'll settle down here in a little bit.
Excellent. And so in addition to this, the Confessions of an SEO, can you tell people a little bit about crawl or no crawl? Because I've been referring a lot of people in that direction.
Yeah. So crawl or no crawl is an outgrowth of the indexation research projects that I started, 507 days ago or something. And so I report on the more immediate nature of indexation. I appreciate everybody sending me like suggestions on how to do better. But it's really more testing the machine of indexation and teasing out all the various processes and functions and kind of getting a feel for how long it takes from publishing to being findable. So I try and share all that as much as I can along with the bot, sort of like the bot scene, within like 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 6 minutes. But I try and do those every day. This particular time of year is a little tough, but I'm trying to keep up with it as much as I can, even if I can't get a video out on that day. But yeah, primarily they're there and you can find them on YouTube.
Yeah, what I always tell people is Carolyn sits up there and she spies on Google to see, what activity, what's moving, what's not moving, and reports back on that. So if you want to understand a little bit about the machine that comes and grabs and chooses to index or not index your content, crawl or no crawl is a great way to go.
Thank you.
Let's see. Clint's not here. So, Ted, you want to talk about SEO this week?
It's a great resource that Clint Butler runs. It's on Monday mornings. He will actually answer direct questions if you're having an issue with your website or if you want to suggest topics or questions about anything. It's a great way to get some free expert SEO advice. You just have to show up once a week and come ready to ask what you need to ask. And it's part of the SIA suite of services. So if you're an SIA member, you get to ask questions off the air. So if you have private things you want to ask, just join that group and you get private access to Clint Butler. What more could you ask for? So SEO this week on YouTube, it's under the moniker Digital Ear. So if you see the Digital Ear name associated with it, you're in the right spot.
Found the right place. Next tested SEO training we've got come up. This is my 8-week training program for people, teaching them intermediate and advanced level SEO stuff. It's basically sharing, a lot of tested data over the years and what is at the heart of the algorithm. The thing that I'm particularly proud of is that now we've gone through 6 classes, 6 training groups through there, and people have done work in all different niches, in all different continents as well, not just, google.com, some of the foreign Google sites, and people have been ranking stuff consistently with it. So if you're interested, you can check out testedseotraining.com and reach out to me. The next one starts February 8th, and we'll close it down in just over a week for the next one. So let's go here. So I made some mistakes, I think we all have. And one of the things that I've seen lately, and I've had conversations with people about, a lot of them have been related to this. In the past, I used to train testers on how to test. And I see them then, and I see them now afraid of screwing up, screwing up a test, screwing up a test design, testing something the wrong way. I see SEOs, good SEOs who's had, a site that goes, that tanks, and they kind of go into an emotional tailspin, on this sort of stuff. I see a lot of people afraid to try something new. They hear stuff at, at conferences or on shows, or, people share these things and they're afraid to try it on their own stuff. And I see a lot of people thinking that the gurus never make mistakes. That's like, you hear it all the time. Oh, I bet Ted never makes a mistake like that. I'm like, you don't know Ted. I know Ted. Ted makes a lot of damn mistakes. Oh, go ahead, Ted.
I'm a believer in the find a safe place to fail. And what that does is it lets you hide your mistakes. So everything that's public facing is always success and victory. And it's one of the best ways to climb a corporate ladder. So if you're in a larger business as, a cog in the machinery, having a safe place to fail for the business where you can test out your ideas and see what works and what doesn't. And then you take what works and you present it to the rest of the organization. And every time you present something, it's pure gold and causes growth and positive impact. That's how you climb the ladder and, get a seat at the executive table within the year. And that's exactly how I did it. I was at an online retailer, and I would test on the smallest of 15 stores. And any SEO that worked, I'd recommend we migrate to the other 14 much larger stores, one of which was a PageRank 8 online retailer. And so, quarter after quarter, year after year, nothing but double-digit growth. And it's not that everything I did was golden, it's that all of my mistakes were in a place where it didn't matter, and all of my successes went to places where it mattered a whole lot.
Right.
And so that's the safe place to fail. And when you have a safe place to fail, you learn your craft very quickly. Most SEOs don't do that. You sign on a big client who doesn't believe in you, so you get a 3-month contract to show your stuff, and you spend the whole time terrified that your next mistake is going to end the engagement, especially if you have a little bit of bad history and you're already on the ropes with them a little bit. You're going to do all the safe plays, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. All those safe plays aren't going to do much because they're not aggressive enough to get the real change you need. And you're going to stop learning your craft. Mm-hmm. And both of which are going to get you fired anyway. So if you don't have a safe place to fail in SEO, you've basically stopped learning SEO.
I would agree with that 100%. So I thought today, what we do is just to shatter the myths. We would just talk about some of our biggest mistakes.
Yeah.
make you feel better about your own mistakes by sharing some of ours. And we've got some other talented SEOs here on Zoom that I would invite them as we go through this to chime in with some of their own whoppers as well. You know, I'll start with one. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to go back into the archives. I don't know, it's over a decade. I found a methodology, you know, I was listening to some people, and they're like, hey, you know what you got to do, an affiliate, go pick a product you like, go build a site. And they had a particular method for building site. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. So at that particular time, I was interested in poker. So I built a site around Texas Hold'em. I thought, this is awesome. I spent a month copying other people's stuff, researching people's stuff, and just building out this beautiful site. And the particular method that they were using at the time was based on pay-per-click traffic, you know, Google pay-per-click. And so I got my site launched, started doing it. And for the couple of weeks, man, I was getting some good traffic and I was getting some conversions. I was so happy. And then one day I log into analytics and there's zero traffic. And I'm like, what is going on? Did my site go down? Is my hosting down? Just whatever I knew at that particular time, which wasn't much. What I didn't know was that about 6 months prior, Google had announced to the world that as of a particular date, they were going to stop gambling ads. I didn't know that. So I built my site and launched it 2 weeks before they'd stopped the gambling ads. So my whole site that I spent over a month building had a 2-week shelf life before it died. Not a good return on investment. And, you know, one of the things that I learned at that particular point is like, you know, I was not plugged into any SEO communities at that time. I was just like following stuff that I would read, and then I would go and implement it and see what happened. And what happened was I wasted over a month on that one.
Yeah, sometimes the mistakes aren't yours, but they're done on your behalf. At one point when I was doing SEO for the online retailer, I started noticing that our indexing fell through the floor. Googlebot would abandon its crawls of our site. And it got to a point where the executives of the company were blaming me for the SEO. But what I didn't know was that somebody else in this 300-person headquarters had signed up for some marketing service that they put in JavaScript code into Tag Manager. And that third-party service would occasionally overflow the maximum length that a browser cookie could be. And whenever that would happen, it would have a 500 error and a detrimental impact on Googlebot in particular. And so it was tanking us for us. And it took a long time to figure out what the heck was going on, what was causing the problem. But sometimes, you know, this stuff comes from out of left field and you just have to figure it out. It can be brutal when it's, you know, a self-inflicted injury from the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. It could be, you know, being ignorant of different types of negative SEO attacks can take you down. You know, sometimes not even being mindful of when like an engineering team is doing website deployments. So if you're not looking at the deployment schedule and the commit logs to see when changes are happening to various parts of the website.
Sure.
You know, it's sometimes, you know, it's the collective mistakes of a team or of an organization. Another one is occasionally our SEO would just go through the floor and I wouldn't know why. And in Search Console, we'd see this explosion of 404s. And so I figured it was negative SEO. But it turned out in the end, it wasn't. It was just the business owner doing domain speculation. And every time he'd win in a domain at auction, he pointed at the money site without even telling us. And some of the domains that he would buy at auction were scorched earth with Google. And so that's, the collective mistakes of the organization. And so we had to build policies to be able to catch those mistakes in the future. We had to make a test website, tell the owner to point his new domains at the test website. And if they tank the test website, we don't point them at the main website. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and it's not always you. Sometimes it's your team, sometimes it's your company, but all those mistakes count in the end.
Well, even recently, at a site that launched, I don't know, it was a couple of months ago, and about 2 weeks ago, I was looking at its performance, and I decided just to run a little inspection on it. And it came back, it said, hey, you know what, you've got some errors on your site. You've got 2 meta descriptions, 2 title tags, and I'm like, no, I don't. So I just grabbed the site, opened up the source code, and I looked, and I'm like, holy shit, I've got 2 meta descriptions and 2 title tags, And one of the themes that we were using on this particular thing was being helpful, and it injected that stuff, and we didn't know. So, we just did all of our default, SEO stuff on it, not realizing it was being duplicated. Now, did it kill our site or anything like that? No, but it was just, something that we missed. So we had to update processes to say, hey, before we launch a new site, let's just make sure that we do a screaming frog crawl and, a couple of these other pieces, just to make sure that there's nothing under the hood that's going wrong. Happens all the time on things like that. And I think the other day, Carolyn was talking about her favorite, on a discussion we were having, her favorite, the dissuade search engines checkbox. I've done that recently. I've done that probably twice in the last year, launch a site and forget to uncheck that box.
Yeah, and sometimes you can even spot other people's mistakes in the search results. Like as of late, I've been able to find people that have the same types of SEO problems just by searching for the problem. So for example, I could do a search for parrot coffee mug and add the special operator in URL : add -to -cart. And you can actually find indexed links where when you click on the link, it'll add the product to cart. And so that's Googlebot crawling a website, discovering add to cart links and indexing them in the search engine. Yeah. And so, that's a terrible mistake, because they're going to go looking at their data going, wow, our website is really popular. Look at all these carts, and they really like this parrot coffee mug. But there's something wrong with our checkout process, because our abandoned carts are through the roof.
Right.
And so you're going to create mistakes that turn into information problems that will then compound into bad business decisions on how to respond. And so there's a life cycle that can turn these things into evolving calamity.
Yeah. And I know the one that we've talked about before is a lot of times when you're, setting up a test, an SEO test, and you go and you structure it, what you think you're testing is this one thing, but what you're actually testing ends up being keyword density. I think, Ted, you always call it the most tested factor alive, because when you make a mistake on SEO test, most of the time that's the mistake that you make, because you've actually introduced a keyword density test into whatever else you're trying to do.
Yep, very true. And there's a concept in enterprise SEO, especially on the engineering teams, that's known as operating without a net, which basically means that if you make a mistake in your SEO or in your web development, that it'll impact real-time revenues in a significant way. And so at the large retailer I was working with, if I messed up the website with something I introduced, it could potentially impact earnings by like $50,000 an hour until the mistake is corrected. And even though they have, you know, staging environments and everything, when your traffic is large enough, there are problems that can be introduced that'll never come up in a staging system. You actually have to put the code under load in order for it to fail the way it's going to fail at scale. And so sometimes you just have to blindly say, we're going to push this out and cross our fingers. And so that's operating without a safety net, because it can be very expensive. And I have had mistakes that were tens of thousands of dollars an hour until they were fixed. And it's stressful, but I mean, that happens. It's rolled into the cost of the business, because if the business fired you for that happening, you'd have nobody to deploy and update your systems, because whoever's going to do it, they're going to ultimately be operating without a safety net. And sometimes mistakes are just that hard.
So how do you handle that? Because, you know, it's one thing at enterprise, but it's another thing, like if you were an SEO and you've got, you know, a handful of clients and you want to do something on the client site, but if you do, it could tank things for a little bit and you get fired and you need that revenue, you know, because, you know, 4 clients doesn't pay the bills, 5 clients does, you know. So how do you handle, you know, the stress of that sort of, you know, decision? You know, what allows you to say, yeah, I'm going to work without the safety net?
Well, I think the key thing is to explain the hazard and let the client decide. You know, it's their business to gamble. I shouldn't be deciding the gamble. I can execute the gamble if you ask me to do it, but I shouldn't decide for you that it should be done. And so that's the main thing, is you just give the client the pros and cons, tell them what you would do if it were your choice, but ultimately it's yours, so you need to decide. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. And you know, if it goes to crap after that, then at least it wasn't your call. We knew the risks. You're operating without a safety net. And if they want somebody to help them with those operations, they just have to know that some of the time it goes our way, some of the time it might not. And, you know, that's just the nature of the beast.
You know, one of the things that has comforted me most of the time with stuff like this is when you're first making these mistakes, it feels like, man, you know, it's hard, but almost all SEO mistakes are fixable. You know, it's just going to take some time. You know, you do something wrong, you know, you do something to the site, you can always, you know, revert back, or you can always, you know, compensate for it, generally speaking. Now, like with your enterprise situation, you're not going to get back those hours where you were losing $10, $20, $30,000 an hour worth of, you know, revenue. That's gone. Yeah. But hopefully, you know, enough times when you do deploy something without a net, you get the bumps that, you know, the losses are forgotten, because the, you know, the bumps you in revenue you ride out for months and months and years at times.
Yeah. One mistake of mine was not connecting the dots sooner on negative SEO. Like everybody in the industry was saying negative SEO is spammy backlinks and negative SEO doesn't work. Those were the 2 recurring themes for years. And, you know, there's this weird pattern that, every couple of months, organic revenue would just fall through the floor. And I wouldn't understand why. Like, it didn't make any sense. There wasn't anything in the error logs. There was no communication out of Search Console. There's just nothing going on other than these weird drops that didn't align with traffic on the site or sales on the site otherwise, just organic. And eventually I started noticing that in between the peaks, there would be these moments where the network administrator for the company would be getting annoyed. He'd be getting frustrated. So, I'd have a low point in revenue. 2 weeks later, the network admin is really pissed off about something. And then 2 weeks later, a low point in organic revenue again. And this cycle kept repeating. So I started comparing notes with the network admin, and there was these low grade denial of service attacks. They were easily thwarted, like he'd stop them the second he'd notice them, but they keep coming back. And so he was getting annoyed that he had to keep spending time on it. And I was like, well, why is somebody doing a failed denial of service? Why are they committed over time to doing the same failed denial of service? We see it and we shut it down within a half an hour. It's totally feeble. It's not taking us down. And I didn't understand that when you line up these attacks and the organic revenue impact, that these attacks that I thought were failed, feeble attacks actually weren't. They were actually highly successful negative SEO attacks. They were interrupting Googlebot crawling our site. They were monitoring the Google cache for last update notices, because our site's very large. So if they could find a recent cache date update for a recent date, they know that Googlebot is on our site. They'd execute the attack. The attack would cause the web server to send 500 errors back to Googlebot. Googlebot would temporarily de-index our websites. And then when we'd ultimately stop the attack, Google would recheck and they'd put us back in, but we'd be like 8 spots lower for 2 weeks before fully recovering. And so they learned how to craft this, and they were practicing, and sure enough, they hit us right before Black Friday. It was all set up going into Black Friday to take out a competitor for the biggest weekend of the year.
Nice.
And ultimately, I mean, that cost us, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix, because ultimately we ended up having to buy like big IP security appliances to shut that down. But it's hard when you don't know what you don't know. It's hard when you're just looking at a situation, none of it makes sense, and you don't know how the dots connect.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens. It's not always your fault, but you still got to figure it out and fix it.
Yeah, another one that was similar to that is on a much smaller scale, but it was a few years back. I bought a software that basically was identifying keywords that you could rank YouTube videos for, and its method was fairly simple. It was, it would take the keyword, put it in quotes, do a search, and see if there were any YouTube videos that had that as the title, because at that point, if you just put a YouTube video with that title up, you were ranking. And I thought, oh, that's pretty awesome. And I'll get the rankings in Google as well. So the niche that I went into, I found a product. It was a horoscope product. And I thought, okay, so I built, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 videos, something along those lines, targeting all these low-hanging keywords. And what I learned in that process, most of them didn't rank at all, because the broad match killed me. And in the horoscope niche, you have big sites that do daily videos on every one of the zodiac signs, and then, you know, all the Mercury in retrograde sort of stuff. And they've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers that, you know, their view counts go to millions within days. And those buried me on both YouTube and Google. So, you know, it didn't work, but you learn about, hey, you know what? Sometimes the long tail falls under the broad match and you get crushed. That was, you know, little things like that, because you don't know, you know, at that particular point, I had no idea. It seemed reasonable to me that an exact match would be all that you ever needed. Not the case. So there was a few weeks, or not a few, yeah, a few weeks down the drain on, you know, just playing around with that idea. But I did end up making about, for a few years, about $7 a month. So, you know, there was that. Suddenly, well, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a bit of an off-topic question, but it's kind of one that's poking at a nerve of mine, so I kind of want to hit it. The question is Cora still effective for ranking, or is it more for correlation now? And the answer to that question is that there's a SEO influencer out there who's been telling people for the past year or two that Cora doesn't work anymore and that Google's too smart for that. I hate to say it, but that influencer's been lying to you. Cora never stopped working. It's always worked well. It continues to work well. And the reason that influencer lied to you was because he got kicked out of the affiliate program. So he wanted to do damage in return. So if that's what you're asking about, that's what happened. Cora still works for everyone. And in fact, my most recent attempt with Cora, I'm speaking at Terry's conference in April, and I needed a website for the conference to use as an example. So I went and bought a domain for the keyword, and I sent out a press release the second I got the domain, before I even wrote a single word of HTML. I made a one-page website for the keyword, and I tuned it to Cora for phase 1 through phase 4, did it in a day. And then I waited 3 weeks. And so from October 25th, when I got the domain, to November 18th, less than a month later, as #1 on Google, #1 in Bing. And sometimes it's just that easy. It's always worked that way for me and most of my users. If you use Cora, please get the training. The #1 mistake, tying it into the topic here, the #1 mistake people make with Cora is they don't get the training. And it is vital that you get the training, because we make sure that it's configured properly. We make sure it's running on your system. We run a report and we go over how to use the data to get the kinds of results that I get. And I train every customer, and occasionally I get a customer that just won't do the training. And they have such a hard time, and they nitpick questions in the chat group, trying to avoid the training. Just, you know, somebody tell me this piece of information. Oh, now I'm next to the next thing I don't understand. Tell me that piece of information. When all of it could have been fixed with a 1-hour training session. So yeah, big mistake is not taking the training when it's offered to you, whether it's my product or somebody else's product. If there's free training, take the darn training. It's a big mistake.
Yeah, and if you're in a course or in a training or whatever, don't be afraid to ask the dumb question. You know, I live with the dumb questions, because, you know, if somebody's gonna, I mean, Carolyn's got a forensic SEO training going on right now. You know, last week she was presenting some new information. I was like, hey, how about this? How about, you know, this sort of thing? Because I have an opportunity as somebody who's in that training to get expert advice from the person putting on the training, you know. Same thing with Cora. Years ago when I bought Cora, I reached out to Ted and said, "Hey, I've got questions." Ted answered the questions, and it just kept going from there. So it's a mistake to sit back and allow that opportunity, which is there for you, to get that expert advice. It's like watching SEO this week. You get to talk to Clint, asking your questions. Why would you pass that up? If it's there, it's free. It just requires you to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and raise your hand. I was going to say, I want to check with, because we got some other people here on the Zoom. If any of you guys want to share some of your mistakes, feel free to jump on. The more, the merrier. Uh-oh.
I mean, I think the premise, we all try and avoid them, but sometimes they are the best educational opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I shared a while back, and I had a business partner, and we were doing a lot of Amazon affiliate type sites. And we stumbled on the questions and answers and how you could use that to create unique content. And we would get it going. I mean, spend weeks and weeks to get it to where the sites were formatting right and getting them spun automatically, going through it. We had a 2-week window, and then bam, it got shut down. And I believe it was probably they recognized a lot of their content.
Mm-hmm.
And made so when I say duplicate content versus syndicated content, I don't do it just because. I do it because it costs me a lot of money.
You found out what a DMCA takedown was, did you?
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah. I think one of the ones in that vein that I enjoyed was Ted, if you're okay, your first cease and desist from Google.
Oh, I don't want to go into detail on that, but yeah, I made the classic mistake of feeding Google to Google, and yeah, you don't want to do that. They don't like it.
They said, no, Ted, please stop. Or not even please, just stop. Yeah. These things happen, but it's pushing those boundaries to see what happens. I mean, I've done things that have tanked sites, but I mean, I'll do this for a second while we're here. Let's go with. So it's a couple of things you can do to reduce the impact of mistakes, because I think it factors into some more of the discussion. Reframe stuff as a test. I have a little saying that's on my board in my office. It's been there for years, that failure is just a test result. And if you look at it that way, you're not the failure. It's just the thing that you tried didn't quite work the way you'd hoped. Build a test site. What was it, 2 weeks ago? Honey built a test site for us using ChatGPT in 2 hours, just feeding it prompts, copy, paste, and we have a test site. Now that test site, we can do anything. We can beat it. We can beat it with links. We can change stuff. We can try sneaky stuff. And, if it tanks, then it's not going to impact, our income. We built test sites specifically to abuse them and see if the abuse takes them down or boosts them. Update your checklists or processes. You find a mistake, like, forgetting to uncheck the dissuade the search engines, or making sure you run, a screaming frog crawl before you actually launch the site out into the wild to make sure there's no fundamental issues with it. And the expert assistance. I mean, we talked about that a little bit. Get the help. If somebody's offering the sort of stuff. But so, Terry, I'd love to hear from you, because I know you've got some mistakes, if you're willing to share 1 or 12.
You talking to me or Terry Samuels? Because he makes a lot more mistakes.
That is true. We'll start with you. What's the one you ever made? And then we'll go to the hundreds that Terry Samuels makes.
Well, sometimes if you think you got a decent handle on SEO, that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes outside of your SEO that really mess it up. I got a client at one time, this was several years ago, they'd come through the website and filled out a form and so on and so forth. Anyway, we talked, they liked what I had to say, sent them a contract, they signed, I got to work. Just about 2 weeks later, they called to complain. They hadn't seen themselves on page 1 yet. And my mistake was not educating them further and assuming they'd actually read the website before they had contacted me. Yeah. And I realized then that the mistake was mine, an educational one, and had to change the way I present a task of SEOing someone's properties for them. It wasn't that I had to change my process of SEO, but the sales process had to change so that people knew what to expect.
Right.
And so that was it was a mistake. It cost me some money because I refunded him what he had paid. Just wasn't worth the hassle, especially knowing with my screw up. So he was going to be asking me questions all the time now. You got to learn and move on. So another big advantage of being part of a community, whether you come to Fight Club, but there are SEO communities out there. Some of them might be a good fit, some might not, but it's easy enough to find out. And be around other SEOs where you can say, hey, I'm doing this, it's working, or I tried this and it didn't work for shit, or it tanked my site or whatever. Obviously test things and share those tests with others in that community so we can all learn what not to do.
Right.
We have a common mistake in the form of a question. So Florin asks, came back after almost 1 year. Are you still telling there's no density penalty for on-page? And yeah, it's a very big mistake to assume that Google is too smart for this and their AI covers that. And if you're not testing those beliefs that you're telling yourself, you're probably lying to yourself. And density and keyword tuned pages still work. And Kyle Roof's rhinoplasty plano style sites are still ranking #1 and 2 today after all those updates, after helpful content, after all the web spam updates. It all still works exactly the same way it did since like 2005. So,
yeah, I still have test sites that are ranking with nothing but GSA. I have test sites that are ranking with nothing but random alpha, just gibberish content, still ranking page 1 on those sort of things. That I have those out there specifically because when Google announces, hey, we're going after spammy backlinks, I can go check my rank tracker and say, nope, they're really not catching these. And the GSA, spam or, the type of content that I put up on that. Even now we're building AI sites just to see if, Google's serious about, we're going to penalize AI or we're going to take it down or we're not going to index it. We want to see, if those sites go down all of a sudden, Google announces something and they all tank, we're like, hey, they're actually doing something about it. But again, the test sites are not impacting our income.
So if you're telling yourself things like, Google is too smart for that, or, their AI is too good for that, or Google solved that a long time ago, you ought to test that because you're probably wrong. let's see, should we do more questions, Lee? I don't
Yeah, we
know
can do
if
more questions. That's fine. You know,
okay. Well, she follows up, just wondering how you prepare a content, just publish and say a prayer. Well, the fact of the matter is, for on-page SEO, when Google's in good operating condition, you can often see the ranking outcome of your changes a day or two after you request indexing on them. So oftentimes when I update a page, I will see a ranking boost the next morning, and I can see if I like or don't like how Google responded. And so oftentimes you can even test your content changes in a hidden div, so you're not changing any user experience, just to see the outcome of the relevancy math. And then if you like that outcome, then you can commit the cost of creating white hat content tuned to that standard. But this notion of I'm going to write quality content and that's the right way to do it, and then I'll give it to Google and hope it ranks, that's really the publish and pray method. I'm at least seeing the word math, seeing the outcome before I even try to write the expensive quality content. And so my way is the safe way of doing it. And so, yeah, you know, it's interesting. And a lot of people, another mistake that a lot of SEOs make is they always assume they have to muck with the main content. When you need to rank a page, you don't always have to muck with the main content. If the main content is for conversion with human beings, you ought to leave it alone, because what you can do is you can add supplemental content to the page, and you can often rank the whole page from the supplemental content that you're adding that's not associated with it. And it creates an opportunity where you can keep CRO and SEO each in their own lane. And I don't think you're harsh. Don't worry about that. I want to give you the information you're asking for. So no, I think your question is very valid and very, very common. Like, your question is so common in SEO that we could go to places like Signals Lab, and, you know, more people would agree with you than would agree with us. That's the truth of the matter. If we took your question to SEO Signals Lab, more of the SEOs are going to side with where your thoughts were about penalties for density than they would agree with us for having recent research on the topic. And even when we give those SEOs and those communities the correct information and the correct answer, the beliefs are so deeply ingrained that they still won't use it. They'll deny the data. They'll deny it. And yeah, it's very crazy in that regard. And no, I don't want to ignore you, because I think your question is good.
Let me jump in on that one, because one of the things that, and I presented, this was part of the presentation that I did for Rockstars back in the fall. You know, if you go into the their search essentials and you look, and I think it's their web spam, they define it. They have like 6 particular things that they target for web spam. And I can tell you that 4 of those I use regularly, and 2 of them I use occasionally, and they all work to rank. So all of these things that people are afraid of doing are, you know, not being penalized. They're not being caught in spite of what, you know, Google's pronouncements are. Now, are my particular websites big, spammy, whatever? No. That's not how I use it. When I'm testing the spammy stuff or the black hat stuff, it's to learn how the algorithm truly works. So if I know that you can go to 100% keyword density and rank a page. Am I doing that on my page? No, because it's hard to read. It doesn't convert. But I know that I don't have to stick at mentioning my keyword twice and praying that my page ranks, or trying to figure out or say a little prayer. Hey, once Google figures out that I wrote this quality content to be helpful and with love in my heart, they'll come and rank it #1. That's not the way the algorithm works. So, the data tells me how far I can push things in a white hat way, because I've tested the limits of it in a black hat way. So,
And you mentioned that we're in the fog, but I can rank a new website to #1 on Google and Bing in about 3 weeks. And I can do it over and over and over again. So I would ask you the question, maybe you're in the fog, so just think about it. Consider the possibility that the information that you've been given isn't right. And if that's the case, how could you figure out the truth of the matter for yourself? And
right.
so that would be the challenge.
Yeah, I would just say this, as far as SEO goes, I'm agnostic. I don't care what works. I just want to figure out what it is. I don't label it white hat, gray hat, black hat, generally speaking. I just want to know what's effective when the algorithm comes and it evaluates my pages, my links, what is it pulling? What do I need to do to rank well? So I don't care. What I do is I just try to test to find the truth of the matter. And if I can test something over and over and over again and get a consistent result with it, regardless of what Google or anybody else says, it's factual, it's repeatable, and that's the most that you can hope for. And most of what I see out there in terms of theory is not factual and it's not repeatable, but it is repeated often. So, I always let the data be my guide. If Google says this and I get different results, fine. If Google says it and I get the same result consistent, I'm like, fine. I don't care. I just want to know, what it is that the algorithm's doing so I can rank my sites.
And it's okay to disagree with us. There's more than one way to do SEO, and we know of dozens and dozens of people that apply the principles as we measure and read them in the data. And so, we don't care what factors are and aren't factors. We just want there to be good evidence to support it. And so, if you want to have a discussion that we're wrong, all that we ask is you bring good data to show us the contrary point. And people often don't do that. They say, I have a client who had, some bad situation, so I cut away 40% of their page and their rankings got better. Well, what did you cut away? Because you were affecting keyword density. You were changing word count and match count in those selected edits. And so if you weren't mindful of it, you were randomly altering keyword density. And so your outcome from those edits could be a random outcome based on whether or not your deletions improved or worsened your density. So, to really make the claim that we are wrong and you are right, we are going to want to see some data. You are going to have to do some tests and show some data, because we've done some tests and we have a lot of data.
That is one of the things that's the hallmark of like the tested SEO training that I do, is I tell people, don't argue with the theory, just go out and implement the steps and bring back the data that shows that I'm wrong. And I haven't had anybody bring the data back that shows that, that I'm wrong. It's because I've just listened to the data. And so, and I can tell you that there's not one way, if right now, if Terry and Ted and Carolyn and I and, Honey and whatever, if we all built a page around the same keyword, they're all going to look different, but they're all going to rank because there's a lot of ways to implement the strategies. It's just a matter of we understand what consistently works. And, that's all we're asking for is if people have data they can come back with, not just a one-time thing. Because when I test stuff, I test it 10, 20 times before I'll let it persuade me that it seems to be working.
And Florin, I do not take it personal. It is your freedom to do SEO your way. And, all I'm saying is there's a route to changing my mind. And that route means you actually conduct a test and share your data with us.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to believe that if you do a proper controlled scientific experiment on keyword tuning, it's more likely that we're going to flip you to our side. That's all I'm saying, is when you do the actual work of testing the claim, I think your data is going to point you in an opposite direction than you've been led. That's my prediction.
Carolyn made a comment in the chat. Carolyn, you want to share that?
Sure. Before I started testing, I was kind of in that same thing, like whoever would speak the loudest, whoever would say I've been in SEO longer, everybody would kind of go like, oh, okay. And when I discovered SEO testing, one of the first things that I tested was a debate in one of the forums. And it was about, should the H1 and the meta title be the same or not, which was best. And the discussion was quite unsatisfying. But once I ran the test, it was that moment of realizing if you create your own data, you can break free from the opinion, from the who's louder, who brings more, sort of career gravitas to the thing. And that to me was the most exciting thing in my entire world. It changed my SEO, my approach to SEO exponentially. I mean, it was incredible to think that that was possible. And now 7 years into it, I love it. I like you say, you can be agnostic about it. It's like, just tell me what works.
Right.
Just run the test, see if it works. If it doesn't work, that doesn't mean it doesn't work, right? Because like you say, you test it a bunch of times. So by applying those principles to it, you can. And this kind of goes back also to what the show's about, which is you realize how many different ways you can run a keyword density test and not know it.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, there was a point in my career where I feel like I was in your shoes. There was a point in the past where I was believing a lot of the things I heard coming out of Google and from the big influencers. And, it took a lot from within myself to be able to challenge those beliefs, to actually run the test and go against it. Because, to a certain extent, I wanted to believe it was right. I didn't want it to be incorrect. The fact that some of the information I was getting was wrong was a big problem, because now I had to figure out what's right and what's wrong. It created a lot more work for me. It wasn't a comfortable spot to be in. And so it's easy to want to stay in a comfortable place where you know the ground you're standing on. But that doesn't mean you actually know the ground you're standing on.
Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest mistake that I ever made in SEO. I tell people part of my story is that, I fucked around in SEO for a decade. And, when I say that, I mean that, I would spend a couple $1,000s a year on software courses, whatever else it was out there. implement it. And I think the best year that I had in SEO, I probably made between $400 and $500 of the $2,000 back. So I was losing money every year on this because I was listening, when somebody would say, hey, I've got this software and all you have to do is run it. It's going to tell you all the keywords you can rank for. You can throw together something, boom, next the affiliate commissions are pouring in Lamborghini by Friday. And I'm like, Lamborghini by Friday sounds good. It's good software, $27 and I'm in. Those kind of things just over and over again. My background is in analytics and testing. And for a decade, I did not apply those skills to SEO until one day, I got sort of ticked off and said, you know what, I'm listening to all these fights. Somebody's got to do something and, figure this out. And so I just started analysis and testing of this stuff. And I quit listening to everybody. I let the data guide me. And, that's kind of where it led me. But, if you think about it, if I'd have done this a decade earlier, especially when the algorithm was so much simpler, it kills me about how much, I could have done with that. But, we live and we learn.
But you're always welcome here. You're welcome to disagree. I'm not gonna let anybody bully you in our audience. That's not okay. Dissenting opinions are part of science too. So all I'd ask is, I hear your claim, and to convince me, I want to see some data. I want to see some empirical testing. So I'm not saying you can't change my mind. I'm telling you how to change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making a prediction that upon testing these concepts, you're probably going to change your stance. That's my
prediction. If you want help structuring tests, reach out. I'm happy to help people learn how to test and go read data.
Let's move on to some other questions here. Let's see. Let me go back to the top. Is there any SEO benefit to getting clicks from social media? Well, I think that traffic is a validating signal. So I think those benefits tend to largely materialize in the area of indexing. There might be some benefits to, things like local proximity and other trending type effects that would be temporary in nature, but I don't think there's a lot of good research around those. What do you think, Lee?
Ted, that I spent months and months testing traffic, and I've got, just reams of data on how Google utilizes those things. And I can move things with traffic. And that's one of the things that I did a couple of public tests in that realm. One of them was monitored by, Clint and Ted. They picked a site and, I went after it and told them exactly what I was going to do, for 4 to 6 weeks, and, moved it up all over the place. So I can do that. And I can tell you right now that I don't teach traffic. And I will also tell you that it is rare that I utilize traffic, because if your on page is good enough and you've got some, decent links, you don't need traffic to move stuff. So everybody's trying to look for the shortcut. You won't need it if you get your on page right. So I'm just going to share that.
Have your tests shown any solid proof on link velocity? Should links be dripped slowly to be more natural, or does it really not matter? My current belief in the system, and I'm calling it a belief because I don't feel it's well tested, is based on the common anecdotes that if your link velocity is too steep, it generally causes issues. We believe those issues are caused from a lack of ranking signal diversity. So what's happening is the algorithm is saying, okay, I see what you're doing there. You added a few links. I'll give you some improved ranking. And then you do some more, and it says, the algorithm says, okay, I see what you did there. You added more links, and we'll give you a little more ranking. Okay. And then you do a whole bunch, and the algorithm says, I see what you did there, and we're not going to give you any additional ranking for that. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go overboard, 50,000 links. And the algorithm says, you know what, we're just going to give you no score for backlinks, and you fall out of search. And those are algorithmic demotions. They're not penalties. They're not over optimization. Because what those web spam algorithms are saying is that if you exploit a minority of factors, that those factors shouldn't count for your score. And so the problem wasn't the number. That 50,000 links is not a bad number of links. And as evidence, I give you every website that has more than 50,000 links. It was never about the number. It was always about how you did it. And the most important question in SEO, this is the most important question. If they can do it, why can't I? Because you can find evidence of people with getting 50,000 links in a day and they rank just fine. You can find evidence of people keyword stuffing 2,700 exact matches onto their page. And they're ranking number 3 in Google for a very high competition keyword. And you can go to that keyword. The keyword is games. And you will find one in the top 3 that has almost 3,000 exact matches. And look at their page, like do the control minus and zoom out the browser and look at the page. It's all images. So on a page that visually has no text, they figured out a way to use their exact match almost 3,000 times, and Google punished them all the way to the top of page 1. If they can do it, why can't I? And turns out there's a reason, and we believe that reason is factor diversity. Do you have the diversity of ranking signals to let you do things like that? And if the answer is no, then you can't do things like that. And people often respond to it the wrong way. So they do their link building and the algorithm gives them the demotion. And, what's the difference between a demotion and a penalty? Well, a demotion is reversible by your own actions. A penalty, you have to go to great lengths to get lifted. But a demotion, you can diversify. You don't have to do the disavows and the link removal requests if those 50,000 links were legit. You just need the ranking signals so the algorithm doesn't punish you for it. And typically on those demotions, if you wait long enough, they get lifted with time anyway. So if you want to pay the 10-month price, you'll eventually come out of it no problem. But if you diversify your ranking signals, you can come out of it very quickly. And we've seen it, we've done it, and it happens with on page and off page.
So we're at the end of the slides, but if people got a couple more quick questions, we can look at that if you want to, if they're there.
Let's see. Let's see. Can you make a video on how to build a topic cluster and keyword cluster? It's a good show idea. Are you guys still running into indexing problems? Not currently. Currently, it's working really well for me. I'm seeing very quick turnarounds at the moment.
Well, if you are having those, crawl or no crawl, I'm just going to say, just take a look at what's going on out there and you'll.
What do you mean by ranking factor diversity? There's a number of forms of diversity. We find that the number of different zones you can put your keywords on a page is a form of diversity. We find a number of the different word lists that come into play. So like entities, variations, exact match, LSI keywords, YAKE entities. The diversity of those things is also important. And we find that, if you think of PageRank as a scalar measurement of authority, the diversity signal that confirms the authority would be the number of different sources you're drawing that authority from. And so that's referring domains. And so diversity comes in many forms. So Mike says, so it sounds like Cora is still quite valuable. Yeah, I mean, it still ranks pages. We use it every day. There's a thriving community of people with similar stories. So if it didn't work, people wouldn't suffer the cost. That's, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Let's see, you willing to share your test data privately? Oh, that's Honey. She's talking to someone. What's the best way to redirect clean expired domains to your main domain? The best way to do it would be to forward them to an inner page that's most relevant. The thing you want to be mindful of is they can blow up the 404 not found. So you need a type of wildcard redirect to handle all the URL forms to the inner page. The most effective way to do it is to map it on a URL by URL basis, but that's usually too expensive of a time cost to be worth doing. So just to an inner page. And the reason we do it to an inner page is that redirects to the home page can misidentify as soft 404s, and that would strip you of the value of doing it in the first place. So if you do it to an inner page, you avoid that possibility. Let's see, if traffic not work, how come there are sites that have no content, no links, and they're on the first page? Well, there's a number of things to unpack there.
Yeah, it's a loaded question.
So first of all, the keyword could be so low in terms of competition that something like a keyword mention in a URL or title would rank it. So it depends on what keyword you're talking about. People can cloak their backlinks, and it's a common practice if you're doing spammy link building to cloak your backlinks so your competitors can't find them and narc on you. No content is an interesting thing because there are ways to cloak content too that are totally white hat. For example, if your website is mostly mobile users and you have a responsive web design that hides part of the desktop presentation, anything that's in your desktop presentation is largely cloaked and will not be seen by the majority of your traffic. And that is cloaked content, and it's totally white hat. It's responsive web design. Same thing is true for people using JavaScript frameworks and server-side rendering, where they make a special case for Googlebot to get pre-rendered content because they don't want the JavaScript errors with crawling. Oftentimes, a visitor visiting will get a different presentation than what that pre-rendering is. And so technically white hat, it's the only way to solve the problem of JavaScript frameworks and Googlebot crawling, but it's still good old fashioned cloaking. And so, yeah, that happens.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to know. I know that I hate to do this, but Carolyn loves puzzles like that. So if you think you legitimately have one that has, no content, no links, no traffic that's ranking, I will bet you that she can find the cause of it.
Yeah, Jordan Pierce, good to see you, buddy. We should get together and compare notes. He mentions that Google has an entire blog on dynamic render. And so Google talks about doing it in the use case of doing it. So it's part of the white hat collection. And, that. And another thing that's an interesting on the idea of mistakes. One of the mistakes I see right now is this kind of stubborn objection to AI content. And so I see these threads in social media where people are saying how terrible the content is and how they write much better content. But the thing I think they're missing is we never said you use AI for CRO. We never said that. All we're saying is that it has amazing implications for ranking pages. So you can leave your main content that speaks to people alone, and you could make a supplemental content widget for the website that's more information on the manufacturing, more information on the product options and what they mean, more information on the history of this device, and those supplemental content widgets all by themselves can get you insane ranking boosts. Like I'm using Chat GPT text and supplemental information widgets. And one of my websites had a 20 position lift overnight on AI content. And it took about 3 minutes and 16 cents of API units. But yet people are going to say it's horrible and I'm not hopping on this bandwagon. And these are SEOs, mind you. But you have to open your mind to the possibility that there might be productive, useful, white hat ways to use this to provide better outcomes for your clients. And if I was your client and I understood that these outcomes were possible, and you're telling me you're not going to even consider it because of a stubborn stance, and that's interesting. We'll see how it all shakes out in time, but Google's response hasn't been to vilify AI. Google announced that they have 20 products coming out this year that are AI, and they have their own version of Chat GPT that they believe is going to be way superior. They're going the other direction than the objections. And I don't know if people see that, but I hope you see it. They're not agreeing with you. They're agreeing with change.
Right.
So don't, on the topic of mistakes, don't be blind to how the market is changing. My advice is you can know and not believe. It's one of those deals where you can stay up to date on how it works and what people are doing, if only so that you know what's going to be used against you out in the field.
Right.
All right, guys. We're way over. So we will see you next week. And Florin, please come back. I do appreciate your input. Even though we don't see eye to eye, there's no requirement that you agree. And so you're welcome every time. I love the civil discourse, and I thank you for being professional while having a conversation. So, all right. Final notes, Lee?
No, just get out there and make some damn mistakes. And I think there was a question about, if they had a domain, to reach out to Carolyn. Carolyn, where should they send you the little, the tricky deep dive domain?
Find me on YouTube on Crawl or No Crawl and leave a comment.
And she'll go and
I'll take a look at it.
She can't resist one of those. You just hang it in front of her and say, hey, here's the mystery. It's like, ooh.
Way too true. You know me too well.
Very cool. So yeah, just go out and make some mistakes. Don't be afraid of it.
And let us know how it goes. Take care.